Gothic 1 is a classic RPG that's currently being remade by Alchemia Interactive and THQ Nordic. There's no release date just yet, but they dropped a demo last week that serves as a prologue to the full game. The prologue only lasts about 30 minutes, but it's a fantastic introduction to Gothic's unique dark fantasy world. You play as Nyrus, a new arrival to the setting, as opposed to the nameless protagonist, the beloved hero of the original game. Through Nyrus' eyes, the player gets an excellent overview of the game's themes and factions. Gothic 1 is set in the Valley of Mines, a penal colony in the Kingdom of Myrtana. Every man accused of a crime, no matter how big or small, has been tossed in here. We're never told what Nyrus did to get thrown in, but Diego, who coldly mentors him upon his arrival, is a good example of this. He says he was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. That could mean a bunch of different things, but nonetheless, it's an example of how in the Kingdom of Myrtana, it doesn't take much to get a life sentence in the Valley of Mines. The purpose behind the penal colony is to mine ore for the king. Ore couldn't be more important right now. The king needs it to fuel his war against the orcs, who have his kingdom on the brink of annihilation. To ensure that the prisoners don't escape, a magical barrier has been set up around the colony. It seems to be a bit of a one-way barrier. They can chuck people in, but no one can get out. Before the events of the game, the prisoners in the Valley of Mines revolted. Now, the entire region is in a state of anarchy, as 3 different camps war for power. The first of these camps, the Old Camp, represents the status quo. They're content with the power the combination of the revolt and the access to the precious ore is given them, and the king is willing to work with them so long as they deliver him the resources he needs to keep fighting the orcs. Their leader is a man named Gomez, and their members include Diego, Whistler, and Kurgo, who will help Nyrus practice his combat skills, but it's mostly because he himself has a fight coming up in the arena. Based on the clothes worn by all 3 of these characters, it seems that members of the Old Camp wear the color red. The second faction is the New Camp. They believe that they can use the ore to blow up the barrier, so they're obviously not down with the way things are, don't approve of working with the king, and are still actively working to find a way out. They're led by Laurus, but it sounds like their hierarchy is a bit more democratic. Dialogue implies that Gomez is the unquestioned leader of the Old Camp, but according to Drax, if Laurus was no longer the right man for the job in the New Camp, he'd step down. I'm sure it's not as simplistic as that, but it does seem to imply a more fluid situation at the top. Other than Drax, the only other member of the Old Camp that we meet is Ratford. In the demo, Drax extends a helping hand to Nyrus, and though Ratford is not nearly as forthcoming, the fact that Drax offers assistance at all does seem to imply that the New Camp is a bit more welcoming than the old one. Based on the scars worn by Drax and Ratford, it seems that their color is blue. The final camp is based in the swamps. We don't meet them in the demo, but we do hear about them through a conversation with Ratford. He describes them as more of a cult than a camp. They take a drug called swampweed, and when they do so, they believe that they can hear their god talk to them. This god, they claim, will soon wake up and help them escape from the Valley of Mines. As for the non-human creatures of this fantasy world, we've already mentioned orcs, and it seems like they might be present in the full game, as the most powerful creature in the demo is a goblin you encounter at the end. There's also some standard fare fantasy stuff. There are giant rats in the mines, and dinosaur-like creatures called scavengers, which are the main enemies Nyrus is faced with during our half hour with him. There's also several mentions of a monster called a shadow beast. We don't encounter it in the demo, but this fearsome creature is the reason that Nyrus is so desperate to find a safe place to sleep tonight. For now, that's all you need to know about the world of Gothic 1. Stay tuned for more coverage of this cult classic game. Thanks for watching. Big thanks to the folks over at Dead Good PR for getting me set up with an early copy of this one. Big shout out to all my Silver and Gold tier YouTube channel members and Patreon subscribers, including James Pruitt, Gustavo Balabi, Lil Caesar, Reed, Bethonian, Anna Novikova, Lara Parenti, Sean Bobby, Bogu, Trace De Asada, Vixol, Dorlaxon, and Junisoft, who get early access to these videos thanks to donations of $5 to $10 a month. See you guys next time, and go birds!